respect. Welcome back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back with you on this beautiful Monday morning, the 9th of February, 2026. That I do come to you live from Kampala, Uganda, with 19 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. For those of you that did join us for our morning broadcast, thank you so much for having been part of that lengthy conversation. Quite a fruitful one, I must say, that we did have there. But yeah, and so we are back to continue with the conversation, with the debate, with the discussion on football. And you'll do me the absolute honors. And, let me know wherever, and from whichever you will be joining us from for tonight's broadcast. But before we proceed any further, you will allow me to have our audios tested just to make sure everything checks out perfectly well before we go ahead. Today so our focus tonight will be on the preview for match day 26. We'll proceed with that also for our morning broadcast, unless otherwise, but that is God willing, if He grants us the life and good health to be here with you in the morning. That will be the plot. But I do hope you've had a wonderful Monday. But before we get into match day 26 conversation, I must acknowledge that it is being confirmed that John Duran has signed as a new Zenit St. Petersburg player on loan from Al Nassr. There, Duran left Fenerbahce, where he was on loan to try a new chapter in Russia. I mean, John Duran has been all over the place, and now this is his third club since leaving Aston Villa in January 2025. So when he made that transfer from Aston Villa. So anyways, guys, so that's what's up. But I wish to say thank you to all of you that watch our shots. Please continue to do the same. When you watch them, please leave a like, please leave a comment. However small, however simple it could be, do not forget to leave a like on there on our shots for those of you that watch them. Then also go over to the channel under the video section and watch all our videos. Leave us a like, leave us a comment, share the video if you've enjoyed it. If you agree, if you disagree, it doesn't matter. Whatever your opinion is, we will continue to engage. And I wish to say thank you to all those that leave us comments. I do spare the time to, respond to those as well. So I really want to say thank you to all of you that endeavor to do that. To all our new community members, the new subscribers, I say thank you so much for choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG community. There. Speaking of videos, today we did put out a video about who will stop Manchester United. That's the question we attempted to answer in that video. Not too long a video. But yeah, please go and watch it as well over there on the channel. For those of you that have already watched it, I want to say thank you so much for sparing the time to do so. But it's not a very long video, only 14 minutes, where we do share our thoughts there. And then tomorrow we'll have another video premiering at around, I think, 11 a.m. Oh, I think I don't know. Should I amend that? Because I'm looking at my timelines for tomorrow, but anyways, it is what it is. So there is a video that will premiere tomorrow still, and it is also about Manchester United, surprisingly. Somebody would wonder why the quick succession about Manchester United. Well, they are making the news for the right reasons in recent times. And that one that will be premiering tomorrow, we attempt to answer on the question, who could be Manchester United's next manager? Here, we'll give you the options among those who believe are going to be strong candidates for the vacant role for Man United. I need to have one of my devices charging as I go through this broadcast. Otherwise, I may run out of battery. Anyways, so yeah, that discussion will also be coming to you tomorrow for that engagement, and you'll be giving us your thoughts. Anyways, like I said, our primary focus today Sorry, tonight will be on Premier League match day 6, in which we'll be going through those games that will be played between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. On Thursday, there's only one game that will be the London Derby between Brentford and Arsenal. Then, of course, action kicks off tomorrow at at 10:30 p.m. when Chelsea play at home against Leeds United. Everton will be at home against FC Bournemouth, while Tottenham Hotspurs will entertain Newcastle. West Ham United will be up against Manchester United. That game will kick off at 11 p.m. Now, meaning while the other games will be going into halftime, literally, the game between West Ham United and Manchester United will be getting kicked off. Man United have not won at the London Stadium. That's where West Ham play their games since 2021. But like we saw over the weekend, Man City had not won at Anfield since February 2021, and yet they went there and broke that jinx. So anything can happen. And then on Wednesday, Aston Villa at 10:30 p.m. will be at home against Brighton, while Crystal Palace will be at home against Burnley. Manchester City will be at home against Fulham, while Nottingham Forest will take on Wolverhampton Wanderers. And then in the later kickoff at 11:15 p.m., Sunderland will be at home at Stadium of Light against Liverpool, a place where they have not lost a single game of football so far throughout this Premier League campaign. Anyways, so to get into the thick of it, I think it's just if we kick off with Tuesday games, and there's no better place to start than that Chelsea game. Hi, Chetan. Good evening. How are you doing? It's a pleasure to have you. Chetan joins us, I think, from India. Very big cricket fan. The World Cup T20 is ongoing. Zimbabwe advanced at the expense or qualified at the expense of the Uganda cricket cranes. I know that Pakistan have protested playing games that are being played in India, because I think the tournament is being played in Sri Lanka and India because of the geopolitics and because of the Pakistanese player who plays in the that was sort of kicked out of India, who was playing in one of those Indian clubs. So that one is also going. Are you from Zimbabwe? No, I'm not from Zimbabwe. That is Jedza. No, I'm not from Zimbabwe. I'm from Kampala, Uganda. Small landlocked country in the eastern part of Africa, surrounded by Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, DRC Congo, and South Sudan in the north. That's the small country I'm from. Our badge is black, yellow, red with the crested crane in the middle. Some people tend to confuse our flag with that of the German, of the Germans. But yeah, the team is playing. Okay. So yeah, how is it going? How is it for Team India? The last time you gave us an update, you are telling us that Pakistan had lost to USA. So continue to give us the updates whenever you can. Anyways, returning to the Premier League, like I said, Chelsea are up against Leeds United. This is a team that not too many weeks ago beat them at Elland Road by 3-1. That was, and still under the charges of Enzo Maresca. You say nice to meet you, man. Yeah, I know Uganda. Thank you so much. Where are you joining us from? Do let me know down in the comment section still where you're joining us from. So before the appointment of Liam Rossignol, who has won the last 4 consecutive games, among the games that Chelsea lost in the latter days of Enzo Maresca, that was against Leeds at Elland Road. They lost by 3-1 in that fixture. For those of you that do remember, Bijol, Tanaka were the goal scorers, as well as Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whereas Pedro Neto scored what turned out to be a mere consolation for the Blues, who are visiting Elland Road. Jedza, thank you so much for the compliment there. So it was that kind of game that where Leeds really sparked into life. When I look back at that game, I do remember Leeds literally feeling like they had sparked into life, and it was entertaining to watch. And that was match week 14. Since match week 14, we played as many as how many? 12 games. This is going to be the 12th game, so it's been that long a time. So yeah, that's what is happened over there. So we do expect another very, very strong and entertaining fixture, because while Leeds have had their blip in form in recent times, we know that they come into match day 26 on the back of winning up against Nottingham Forest by 3-1 as they opened the match day 25 on Friday last week with players like Goodmanson, players like Jaden Bogo and Dominic Calvert-Lewin being the goal scorers in that one, as they beat up against Nottingham Forest by 3-1. So very, very decent team in Leeds United that Chelsea will be up against, like I said. But it's also going to be a very, very different challenge for Team Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, as it is going to be a very different challenge for Leeds when they play away to Stamford Bridge. We know that who do you think will win the league? Well, according to my Premier League predictions at the start of the campaign, I said Arsenal would win the league. I thought Liverpool would come second, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that way. I thought Chelsea would come third and Man City fourth. Really, I put Man United seventh on that Premier League log. I think with Tottenham behind them, they're about with, I think, Aston Villa or Newcastle in fifth. And I think Newcastle in fifth. No, Newcastle sixth and Aston Villa fifth, something like that. So that video is pinned on the channel. You can go over there and take a look at it when I do give my season predictions, my analysis, and why I had put the teams wherever I put them. I thought Brentford would struggle, that they would be among the teams that would be relegated. But Keith Andrews has surprised us all. He's won as many games as Man United and Chelsea up until this stage in the season. 12 wins, one win more than Liverpool, so he's looked impressive. So yeah, if Arsenal win the league, football will be ruined. What makes you say that, Jedza? What makes you say that football will be ruined? Do you come from a society where Arsenal fans are full of banter, or where the rivalry between Arsenal fans and Man United fans is that big? Because I didn't catch exactly which country you're from. So, because usually when you're from a country where the dynamics are as such, then there's that feeling. But still, over in the UK, Tottenham fans are worried. They do not want Arsenal to win the Premier League because of what it would mean for London and their bragging rights, and of course their rivalry and things like that. So there's so many opponents that do not want Arsenal to win the Premier League in terms of fan bases and things like that. But of course, for Man United, if you're a Man United fan in the UK, you'd rather Arsenal win it than Manchester City, because otherwise, then they make a mockery of whatever you think of the rivalry that does exist between Man City and Manchester United. Do you like Barcelona? I have no problem with Barcelona. That is Henrique Alcacia. Hi, Henrique. Good to have you on the broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Do let us know where you're joining us from. For those of you that are just joining the broadcast, my name is Robert Kesakos, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, where it's 32 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if it's your first time here. Anyways, you say, yeah, I hate both Lolo, Man City, and Arsenal. I'm just a Man U guy. Well, so anyways, unfortunately for you, you're caught between a rock and a hard stool. Otherwise, you'd have to hope for either Aston Villa to win it, or both Arsenal, Man City, and Aston Villa to bottle it up, and then United somehow leapfrogs them to win it. Of course, in an ideal world, any Manchester United fan, that's what they will be praying for. So, you know, I'll simply put it that way. My favorite team is the Brazil national team. That's my favorite team. So anyways, so for Leeds, it's going to be a whole mountain to climb. I think in the last 13 games, I think they've lost only 2 games for Leeds United. They've looked good. Of course, they lost to Arsenal on match day 24 by 4-0. That was at Elland Road, but they recovered from that with that victory against Nottingham Forest. And then when you rewind further back, they on match day 21, they lost to Newcastle by 4-3. In between there, they managed to beat up against Fulham by 0-0, shared the spoils with Everton in a 1-1 draw, and of course their last being a victory against Nottingham Forest, who are their relegation rivals there. So talk about CFC, that is Tom. CFC, you mean Chelsea Football Club? That's the team we are discussing. We are discussing the Chelsea game, who face off with Leeds tomorrow. So, but we began by taking an insight into Leeds, their day's opponent. So, please bear with me as we go through all that. So, Daniel Fakir, that's the Leeds manager, of course, changed his team from what they were in the first phase of the season, largely, or before the end of the first half of the season, to a back three, and they've looked good. They've really, really looked impressive. For if anything, when you look at that game that they won on Friday, they were quite impressive to watch. Thami, hi Thami, good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Yes, excuse me. In that victory over Nottingham Forest, it was the unknown striker, that is Lorenzo Luca, that scored what turned out to be a mere consolation for that Nottingham Forest side. Otherwise, Leeds were quite dominant in majority of the aspects of the game, apart from shots on target, for which Nottingham Forest had 6, with a total of 16 shots on target compared to 14 and 5 respectively for Leeds United. But yeah, they were not that clinical in that regard. Then, in terms of how Leeds set up, I do not think their lineup will change that much. I expect to expect their goalkeeper, that is Carl Darrow, in goal. Expect to see Rondon, Justin Goodmanson, players like Ampadu in that midfield, Jaden Bogo, Aronson, Noah Okafor, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who has been quite the scoop, or has turned out to be quite the scoop for this Leeds United side. I say that because they signed him as a free agent in the summer when he left Everton. And he spent quite some time without a club until literally the later days of the transfer window, when Leeds decided to snap him up. And it couldn't have worked out any better because he so far scored for them 10 goals. That's as many as Liverpool's Hugo Ekitike, who is also in his debut campaign. I think, and I stand to be corrected, this is the second season that Dominic Calvert-Lewin is scoring 10 goals. Hopefully he will go 10 plus, because the first time he did that, I think, was 2019-2020 Premier League season. You remember that COVID season when they were under the charges of Carlo Ancelotti at Everton? So they looked really, really impressive there. Wow, thanks, bro. That is Matkins Tom. Thank you. Jedza says Sunderland is actually doing good, unlike the other teams that got promoted, like Burnley. Yeah, of course, I thought Sunderland would be one of the teams that would be relegated, but I couldn't have been disproved more wrong by Regis Libris, their manager. But before we diverge into Sunderland, let's cross over to Chelsea, because Chelsea have been in impressive form. Out of the 9 games that Liam Ross Sr. has managed Chelsea through ever since his appointment, they've won as many as 7 and lost only 2. They've won 4 consecutive games in the Premier League. They won an FA Cup game. I think that was against Charlton Athletic, and then 2 games in the UEFA Champions League against Pafos by 0-0, and then again against Napoli by 3-2 in Naples. For those of you that remember that bracer from Joao Pedro, inspiring Chelsea to a 3-2 victory against Antonio Conte over in Naples in the UEFA Champions League match day 8. So I think Liam Ross Sr. has done tremendously well over the weekend. We did see Cole Palmer score a first half hat-trick as Chelsea beat up against Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-1, and in a very, very impressive performance. Of course, 2 of those were penalties, while the other was a goal in open play with Aro Kodare scoring what turned out to be a mere consolation for that Wolverhampton Wanderers side. I did say going into that game, for those of you that are regulars on this channel, will remember my words, that if you're Chelsea, when you look at the fixture schedule, then the next 3 games are a must-win for you, starting with the game against Wolves. And for the Wolves game, it's already tick. After that, they play Leeds, and after Leeds, they have a game against Burnley. And for me, those are games that you ought to win if you want to finish anywhere within the top 4, because after that, then they will have fixtures against Arsenal, and I think possibly against Aston Villa, maybe Newcastle, in some of the other fixtures that they ought to play. there. So it doesn't get any easier after playing Burnley, because you play away to Arsenal. It can be a difficult game at the Emirates Stadium. You go away to Villa Park, can also be a very difficult game, even though Aston Villa have not had form going for them recently. And then a home game against Newcastle. So all those can be difficult games in their own way. I'm not saying the game against Leeds and Burnley are as simpler or as simple, but in comparison to the other three, then if somebody asked you between Leeds and Burnley, in comparison to Arsenal and Aston Villa, or Arsenal and Newcastle, which ones would you rather play? I'm sure most Chelsea fans will say, yeah, give me the former, and not the latter. So in that sort of context, okay, just let me first read some of your comments. I can see somebody said, Chelsea is good. I don't hate it. That's Jedza. Then Thami said hi. Wow, thanks, bro. That's from Tom. Sunderland is actually good. I read that comment. Chelsea is not doing very bad, bro. That's true. Palmer isn't doing very good. Well, and then Tom says, let me hope so. Now, in terms of Cole Palmer, let's cut him some slack, really, because we're talking about a player whose season has been hampered by injuries. It's been hampered by injuries in the form of, you remember he struggled with a groin injury. You remember him being withdrawn in that game that they lost away to Man United by 2-1 at Old Trafford earlier on in the season, a game in which Robert Sanchez got himself a red card for his foul. So when you look at the player, and again, he's still young. Now, I know there's a cap on what goes for young, but at 23 and your season gets hampered by injuries, then you ought to cut him some slack. In any case, he's been by far Chelsea's standout performer ever since joining the club. You remember the things he was able to do last season, scoring 15 goals and providing 8 assists. And yet you still feel like that doesn't say it all. You remember in his debut campaign with Chelsea, I think he scored about 20 goals when they were under the charges of Mauricio Pochettino. So really, it's not something that when you look at this season, he's only played about 14 games in the Premier League, and yet he still has 7 goals. Of course, no assists. I think he has no assists, but he still has a tally of 7 goals. Whether many of those are penalties, that's all beside the point. He's still banging them in, So I would say cut him some slack in a way. So I think he will go on to be better. He'll continue to be better in the, perhaps for the rest of the season if he can remain injury free. Otherwise, I do not think I'll be too worried about him. In my personal opinion, when you look at Cole Palmer. Yes, that was, let's see the statistics for the 2023-2024 season, because he joins Chelsea after scoring against Arsenal in the Community Shield in that game for Man City that ended in a 1-1 draw before Arsenal won on penalties. So in his debut campaign with Chelsea, he played 34 games and scored 22 goals and had 11 assists. That's a 33 goal involvement in 34 Premier League games. So when you look at his overall Premier League career with Chelsea, 103 appearances, 44 goals, 20 assists. That's a 64 goal involvement in 103 games. So that's impressive, really, for me, in my opinion, if you had to ask me. So I would say do not be too hard on him. Adama Traore scored. Joao Pedro sobered when he pushed him. Oh, you're talking about the West Ham game that they won by 3-2. Of course, it was the first half was ugly for Chelsea. The second half was much better. That's when they scored all 3 goals. I think Marco Correa scoring the equalizer in the 70th minute in that one. We all saw the scenes there. Anyways, like I said, at Ellen Road, when the two sides met, Leeds were winners. But when you look at their last 5 league meetings between Chelsea and Leeds United, Leeds now have won their last 2 fixtures at Ellen Road, while Chelsea have won there. And that was for the 2020, this was what? 2021-2022 Premier League season, when Chelsea beat up against Leeds home and away by 3-2 at Stamford Bridge and then 3-0 at Elland Road. While the 2022-2023 Premier League campaign, Leeds beat Chelsea 3-0 and Chelsea won the reverse fixture by 0-0. Now, I do have high hopes in Chelsea winning this game, even though it's not going to be a walk in the park. It's going to be a difficult one, it's going to be a difficult one for Liam Senior, as is any game in the Premier League, because that's usually the case. Like I said, Chelsea are they are one of the two teams with a perfect run of form in the last 4 fixtures. Chelsea and Manchester United, they are the only two Premier League teams to have won their last 4 consecutive fixtures, with Chelsea beating up against Brentford by 2-0, beating up against Crystal Palace by 3-1, West Ham by 3-2, and Wolverhampton Wanderers by 3-1. So my prediction, I'm going to go with Chelsea to win this game by 3-1. That's the prediction I'm going to go with. I think Leeds United will put up a very decent and spirited fight, but I think Chelsea will overcome them at the end of the day. That's at Stamford Bridge. Bruno Fernandes is definitely the best in the Premier League right now. Well, subjective, but I would say he's the best 10 in the Premier League and possibly in Europe at the moment, statistically speaking. So that's where I'll place that. Okay, let's move away from the Chelsea Leeds game and look at another fixture that will be coming our way. Then guys, okay, before I proceed to the other fixture, we do play a game on this channel. It's a predictions game. We predict 10 games of the Premier League on each match day. And when you get a perfect score, you get 3 points. When you get a win or a draw, regardless of the scoreline, you get 2 points. So that's it. So as I give you my predictions, I'm reminded to be taking note of what my predictions are for match day 26 of the Premier League. Unfortunately, Pedri is not yet here with us. Pedri is a Barcelona fan from Spain who joins us normally for those predictions, and he gives us our predictions. He's participating in that game. The other person he calls himself Africa Will Never Unite. He's also participated. He participated in match day 24 of those predictions. So in case you wish to participate, please feel free to join the game, and we'll take note of your predictions. So Everton versus Bournemouth. Everton have been doing okay. We're talking about a side who, in their last 5 games, have not lost a single game. They've won 2, beating up against Aston Villa by 0-0. That was at Villa Park. Then beating against Fulham last weekend by 2-1. Even though the winning goal was an own goal from Bernard Leno, and then the draws coming against Wolves in a 1-1 draw, Leeds United and Burnley are all in 1-1 draws. Whereas in comparison, on the other side, Bournemouth have equally not done bad themselves. They've won 3 of their last 5 games and drawn 2. Winning against Tottenham Hotspur by 3-2, against Liverpool by similar scoreline, while in between that they had a 1-1 draw against Brighton and Hove Albion. Against Wolves, it was a 2-0 victory, while it was also a 1-1 draw in their last league outing against Aston Villa there over the weekend with Ryan, the January signing. You remember in his first game against Wolverhampton Wanderers, he came off the bench to make his debut, and he provided an assist. And then on his first full debut, he scored against Aston Villa. So he's looked really impressive. The 19-year-old Brazilian from Vasco da Gama. Also, then For Everton, they've had some players that have been really impressive this season. Kenan Brisbane-Hall is one of those. Jack Grealish, before he got injured, although he's on loan from Manchester City. Players like Thornberry had started to pick up their form in recent games. And things have been really going well for Everton recently. So we are talking about a team that Everton managed to beat by 0-0 in their last league outing. That was at the Vitality Stadium. While last season, Bournemouth completed a double against Everton when they beat them 3-2 at Goodson Park. before they made the switch to the Hill Dixon Stadium, where they are playing this season, and still Bournemouth won the reverse fixture by a goal to nil. And then when you go to the season before last, both teams shared the contest with Everton winning at home, while Bournemouth also won at home by 3 goals to nil and 2-1 respectively. So when you look at their last 5 league meetings between the two sides, you say Everton do come out on top. Sorry, Bournemouth come out on top with 3 victories over Everton, while Everton take the other 2. So there's not been a draw. There's not been many draws between these two sides. In fact, they've met 17 times in the Premier League so far, and there's been only 2 draws. Everton have won the fixture 7 times, and Bournemouth have won it 8 times. However, given their recent form, Everton can equally be sometimes very unpredictable, by the way. But I do feel this one could end in a draw. So even though over the weekend I got it wrong when I went for a draw against between Everton and Fulham, you could see it was really close. It almost ended in that 1-1 all draw. But somehow Everton managed to nick it thanks to that own goal by Bernard Leno to win all 3 points. But I'm going to say Everton will draw this one in a 1-1 draw against FC Bournemouth. I do not see too much separating the two sides at the Hill Dixon Stadium. Then Tottenham Hotspur against Newcastle. We know how poor Tottenham Hotspur can be at home this season, or how poor they have been at home this season. In fact, they are one of the teams with the worst record of form in terms of home fixtures. When you look at the number of points they've gathered from home, it's far less. For example, they come 17th on the Premier League log for fewest points gathered at home, as low as 10. And they come up against a Newcastle side, Newcastle, who are equally so poor because they're having a very bad season. In the aftermath of their 3-2 loss to Brentford over the weekend, manager Ed Howe took his individual self to blame for their poor form this season, for their lack of results. He says it's up to him to find the solutions. He's been trying to find the solutions. He did say nobody puts himself under pressure more than he does. So we are talking about two teams that arguably have one of the worst forms there is in the Premier League. When you look at Tottenham Hotspur, in the last 5 games, they've not won a game. They've lost 3 and drawn 2. Losses to FC Bournemouth by 3 goals to 2, lost to West Ham by 2 goals to 1, drew against Burnley and against Man City in 2 all draws, and then got beat over the weekend by Manchester United. Their captain, Christian Romero, got a red card, so he's going to be suspended for, I think, the next 3-4 games, because he has had 3 or 4 red cards this season. So it's not looking pretty for Tottenham Hotspur, a team that is already has one too many injuries to deal with. So they leave themselves short with the sending off of Christian Romero, the captain, a player who I believe chances are very high will leave Tottenham Hotspur in the summer. But players like Destin Udogie, Dejan Kulusevski, Kevin Danso, James Maddison, Pedro Porro, Mohamed Kudus, Richarlison, Rodrigo Bentancur, Ben Davies, Lucas Bergville have all been sidelined previously through injury. Then when you look at Newcastle, I think for Newcastle, the conversation is less about injuries, even though they have a fair share of their own, with Anthony Gordon going off in that game recently with the hamstring injury. I think he went off in the Man City game, in the return leg for Man City in the EFL Cup with the hamstring injury. Joelinton has been struggling with the groin. Lewis Miley suffered a knock. Emily Kraft, Fabian Schär, and Tino Livramento, who has a hamstring injury. So, but nonetheless, Newcastle still have a very decent team available to their disposal. Steven Botman, Kieran Trippier, Lewis Miley, what's his name? Malik Thiaw in defense there. The Fabian Schär, they've had some really, really decent players available In midfield, Bruno Guimaraes is back. He scored a penalty against Brentford. Unfortunately for them, it was not enough to salvage a point in that fixture. Sandro Tonali, this one is increasingly being reported as a summer target for Manchester United, who are also interested in the services of Harvey Elliott from Nottingham Forest. We know for a fact that Nottingham Forest and we know for a fact that teams like Man City have been monitoring and tracking Elliot Anderson, and among the teams that will be interested in his services in the summer released over recently in the final day of the January transfer window. Sandro Tonali was being linked with a potential move to Arsenal, of course, which we knew was always going to be impossible because there's no way Newcastle were going to let the 25-year-old Italian midfielder leave in January, given their responsibilities that they still have to battle in the Premier League, in the FA Cup, as well as the UEFA Champions League. And of course, at the time, they still had a battle to fight in the EFL Cup semi-final, in which they were eventually knocked out as the reigning champions. So Newcastle have only won one game of the last 5. They have drawn one. That means they've only amassed 4 points out of the possible 15 from the last 5 fixtures, because they've lost 3 consecutive games, losing to Aston Villa by 2-0, losing to Liverpool by 4-1. That's match day 24. And then more recently against Brentford by 3-2, Dango Ouattara scoring what turned out to be the winning goal in that one, while Igor Thiago scored his 17th goal of the season from the penalty spot. And then Janelt did score in the 37th minute to restore parity after Steven Botman had scored to give Newcastle the lead in that game. So a very tough fixture for Newcastle. I wish I could say that I see a bigger or better future for Newcastle. Both teams, like I've said, do not have anything like form on their side. But in terms of their individual meetings earlier on in the season, this is a game that ended in a 2-2 draw at St. James's Park. While when you go back to last season, Newcastle managed to beat Tottenham Hotspur home and away by 2-1 in the respective fixtures. Then prior to that, there had been a 4-0 victory for Newcastle in the 2023-2024 season, and as well as a 4-1 victory for Tottenham Hotspur in the same campaign. So really, when I look at this game again, I struggle to see a winner because both teams are bad. When you look at Newcastle's home form, it's been poor. They come 10th with 23 points, but really it's not been at the very best. Their away form has been even worse. And yet Tottenham Hotspur at home are equally worse, because for Newcastle, they've only taken 10 points away from home. Yet Tottenham, with 29 points, they've taken 19 points away from home. Unfortunately for Tottenham, they'll be playing at home. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw in this one. I do not know why I'm predicting too many draws. But yeah, I'll go Spurs to Newcastle 2 there in that fixture. That game also kicks off at 10:30 p.m. East African time between the two sides. And then in the later kickoff over match day 26 on Tuesday is going to be West Ham United at home against Manchester United. We know what the responsibilities of Manchester United are in this particular season. Jedza said earlier on that Bruno Fernandes is definitely the best in the Premier League right now. Well, whereas that in itself is subjective, I would say for me he is the best 10 at the moment in the Premier League and possibly in Europe. Now, West Ham United, we are talking about a team that is battling relegation. They've managed to win 3 games out of the last 5 and lost 2, losing to Chelsea and losing to Nottingham Forest. They lost to Nottingham Forest by 2-1, lost to Chelsea by 3-2. A game in which I thought they would at least fight for a point after going 2-0 ahead by halftime. But unfortunately, they couldn't hold it up to that. Excuse me. So, Nuno Espirito Santo is convinced, perhaps beyond a reasonable doubt, well, he's the manager, perhaps he needs to communicate that positivity, that they will not be relegated, that West Ham will not be relegated. Of course, that does speaks to alleviate the fears that West Ham fans may be having. But unfortunately, um, it's one thing to have hope, and it's a whole different thing to actually, get it over the line, in terms of avoiding the relegation drama, So for Man United, they do have some injury concerns. Mason Mount will not be available for Tuesday's fixture. He's just recovering from injury. So is expected to miss that trip to West Ham United. Then for West Ham, Jean-Claire Todibo will be serving his second. He will be serving the second of his 3-match ban following a late red card that he received in the 3-2 defeat against Chelsea. You remember that chaos that somebody was talking about earlier on that involved Adama Traore, Marco Correa, Joao Pedro, Mavropanos, Jean-Claire Todibo, and a couple of other players in there. Then also, West Ham have struggled with goalkeepers. This time around, they signed in the summer Mads Hermansen from Leicester City, but they started within the season. It wasn't working too well. Of course, then it was Graham Potter in charge. They brought back Alfonso Areola in goal. Remember, they also resigned Lucas Fabianski as their third choice goalkeeper, having let him initially go as a free agent at the end of his contract. But their goalkeeping has been worrying. Defensively, they've been really, really poor. They've been shipping in so many goals. And my worry for them is that they concede too many goals and they come up against a Manchester United side that are having that feel-good factor about them. They have momentum going for them. There's a Man United fan who has not cut his hair in the last literally 1.5 years, waiting for the time Man United will win 5 consecutive games before he can cut his hair. I said to him, book your spot with the Baba, because I see Man United winning this game. Like I said, Man United have that good feel-good factor about them, and they feel they are in the good moment. Michael Carrick has given them the belief, the momentum. They need to go for it. Like I said earlier on in this broadcast, Man United is one of the most informed teams, is one of the 2 most informed teams in the Premier League, having won 4 consecutive games and unbeaten, I think, in their last 8 Premier League games, possibly. So when you look at the 2-2 draw on Match Day 21 against Burnley, ever since then they've beaten up against Man City 2-0, Arsenal 3-2, Fulham by a similar scoreline, and 2-0 against Tottenham Hotspur, as I think they kept their 3rd clean sheet of the season, the other coming against Man City and another against Sunderland, all in 2-0 victories. I stand to be corrected if there is any other than those. But yeah, I think Michael Carrick, like I did stress in that video on who will stop Man City. For those of you that are just joining us, kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Earlier on, allow me to make reference to this video that we did publish. Perhaps, let me see if I can get it and pin it in the comment section about Man United, on who will stop Man United, So the reason as to why I make reference to it is I made the case that Michael Carrick has not done much. He's not done so many magical things. No, he's simply done the basics right. What are the basics? I play players in their rightful positions, and I take things from there. For example, shifting Bruno Fernandes from shifting Bruno Fernandes from the number 8 role into shifting Bruno Fernandes from the number 8 role to the number 10, where he loves to play the most. Then you have things like Diego Dalot playing at right back, Luke Shaw at left back, Maguire and Lisandro Martinez, who have conjured up some good partnership in recent games, despite conceding 4 in 4. Jesus Christ, apologies. Somebody's disturbing me with notifications later on at this time. So then you have, so that midfield with the shifting of Bruno Fernandes out of the 8 pocket and slotting in Kobe Maino to play alongside Casemiro is an impressive move. Then you have, what's his name? Excuse me. Then you have, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, then you have Brandon Mbeumo leading the lines, Amadou Diallo. You have what's his name? Cunha in the absence of in the absence of Patrick Dogu has been quite good on that side. So things have been going on well for Man United. And yeah, hey, if you shout out my account, I promise to keep being the funniest person in your chat. Fair trade. I'm not sure I'm up for funniest. That is fun. Meow fun. Hi Meow fun. But I'll take a sub to the channel. I'll take a like to the broadcast. But thank you so much for being part of the discussion. So yeah, that's what's been going on at Man United. So they are in that sort of phase where they're beaming with confidence. Everything they're doing is going right. They have that never give up attitude. We saw it against Arsenal and against Fulham when they win both games really late with their third goal through Matas Cunha and subsequently through Benjamin Sesko in the Fulham game. So they have that grit about them. They are enjoying themselves. They are enjoying themselves. They do not have much pressure on their shoulders. If their objectives this season had become blurry, they become clear now why the objective is to finish within the top 4. Possibly if Arsenal can sleep or Man City and all the others, then they can go for the title. But I'm sure between you and I, Michael Carrick is not thinking about the Premier League title. Those players are not thinking about the Premier League title. They're thinking about the next game. And the advantage for Man United is that they only have the Premier League to worry about. That's the only competition they are playing in. They have no distraction whatsoever. Michael Carrick has had ample time to work with those players on the training pitch. Of course, with the assistance of Steve Holland, who was Gary Southgate's assistant at the England national team. So then John Evans, I think, is within that sort of cohort of the coaching staff. So you have a Michael Carrick who knows the ins and outs of the club, which could work to his advantage. I'm not saying it's ultimate or finite because Ole Gunnar Solskjaer equally had, the same advantage, but eventually got sacked, I think around November 2021 before Michael Carrick took over as an interim, as caretaker manager for about 3 games in which they beat up against Villarreal by 2-0, beat up against Arsenal by 3-2, while the other was a 2-2 draw against who? Was it against Brighton? I do not remember correctly. But yeah, so he's worked with this team. He knows a thing or two about how to motivate those players, and he's proven that he can do it. So yeah, on the other side, for West Ham, sometimes they just do not turn up. They defend poorly. But recently, Somerville has been in great form. Fernandes has been in great form. What's the other player's name? I'm trying to remember. Geez. I'm trying to recall that name. Mateus Fernandes has been okay. Malik Diouf. Castellanos, I think, was one of the goal scorers last weekend against Burnley. And then the other goal was scored by Somerville. Mateus Fernandes, I think, scored in the other 3-1 win against Sunderland. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Gerard Bowen, for me, has not been as good this season. He's really, really struggled He's not been the best of. We've not seen the best version of him in terms of goals and assists, but he can be a threat to any opponent on a given day. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see what result they bring. But I think Man United are going to win this game by 3-1. Yeah, I'm going to go Man United to win 3-1 in that fixture against West Ham United to allow their fan a trim of his hair there. Anyways, do let me know if you have divergent views and thoughts on that game in particular, whether you think Nuno Espirito Santo is capable of standing this Man United side. Like I said, they've not won away to the London Stadium since 2021. They've lost, some games there. On their last two visits, they lost by 2-0 and 2-1 respectively, while away to Old Trafford, West Ham lost by 3-0. That was for the 2023-2024 campaign, while last season, they went to Old Trafford and won by 2-0. And then earlier on, this season, it was the game ended in a 1-1 draw between the two sides. So, I mean, but it's West Ham United, Anything can happen. Magas and Diego Dalot scoring in that one. Anything can happen in a game of football. So there's a chance, there's a world where West Ham hold Man United to a draw. There's a world where West Ham stand Man United. Football is not immune to those surprises, So not that a loss to United or a draw would be the worst result, but it would only speak to the uncertainty or the unpredictability of football. When I give my predictions here, they're not finite. They're just predictions. It's a guess. It's an educated guess based on the factors that I've looked at. But even though it's an educated guess, it doesn't mean it's going to be exactly the way I predicted it. I come from a weekend where I lost so many predictions. I could only amass 8 points in our predictions game. So yeah, that's there to say the least. Then quickly, okay, let's look at some other games that will be played on the day after that. That will be Wednesday. But we can also look at those tomorrow. But yeah, I think we can take a bite off of some. Funny stuff there. Anyways, okay. I was thinking about Liverpool because I'd seen a statistic that was trending of how Luis Diaz has a 34 goal involvement across all competitions for Bayern Munich this season, and yet Hugo Ekitike has 19. Mohamed Salah has been far from it. Cody Gakpo wasn't even in the frame. And things have not really. Florian Wirtz was in there, and yeah, that's how bad football can take a quick turn. Anyways, on Wednesday, Aston Villa will be at home against Brighton. Now, Brighton is one of those teams that I wouldn't want to say have fallen off, but have been far from convincing this campaign. They've been far from convincing. And yet Aston Villa's form in recent times, like I touched upon earlier on, hasn't been equally good. If you want to understand how bad it's been for Aston Villa, in their last 5 fixtures, they've only won 1 game, and that was away to Newcastle by 2-0. Goals by Emi Buendia and Oli Watkins. In the same spell, they've lost to Brentford and to Everton, and these were all games at home. And then a draw against Crystal Palace and a draw against FC Bournemouth. So we're talking about a team that has really, really struggled for form recently. They play at home. Of course, injuries have not helped their efforts. With injuries to John McKean, Yuri Tillemans, Boubacar Kamara, among others. Brighton, on the other side, have lost 2 of the last 5 equally and have had 3 draws against Man City, Bournemouth, and Everton, losing to Fulham and Crystal Palace in the previous weekend by a goal to nil. That goal scored by Ismail Sarr, So it's not been easy for both sides. Aston Villa do not have any momentum to carry themselves with into this fixture. Earlier on in the season, when the two sides met, it was a 4-3 victory for Aston Villa away to Brighton, and that was the time when Aston Villa had that good feel factor about them when they went on an 11-game unbeaten run, So they were really, really impressive. And away in the last 5 games, Aston Villa have won 3 of those. There's been 1 draw and 1 victory for Brighton. So Brighton, if there's any team that they struggle to beat up against, is this Aston Villa side. In 13 meetings, they've lost 8, they've drawn 3, and only won 2. I'm going to go with an Aston Villa win for this one. 2-1. Yes, Brighton have the good players, the Yassine Ayari, Yankuba Minte, Danny Welbeck, Pascal Grob, Carlos Baleba, Lewis Dunk, Max Dikupia, Kaoru Mitoma. It's just not worked out well. Kadioglu, Matt Verbruggen, Bart Verbruggen, not Matt, Bart Verbruggen, So I'm going to go for an Aston Villa win. I'm going to have faith in Villa to win by 2-1. That's my prediction for that game. Aston Villa to beat up against Brighton by 2-1 at home. That's the prediction for that game. Anyways, moving on. Crystal Palace versus Burnley. Crystal Palace versus Burnley. Who wins? Who wins? The question is, who wins this one? Crystal Palace just returned back to winning ways over the weekend with their 1-0 victory against Brighton, like we mentioned just a couple of minutes back. We're talking about a side that they managed to beat by a goal to nil in the first leg. This time around, they're going to be at home with all their problems. It's a fixture that Crystal Palace have not lost in the last 5 meetings. There have been 2 draws and 3 victories for Crystal Palace. They return home against this Burnley side with Jean-Philippe Mateta. Of course, we know his injury issues that impeded his move to AC Milan. We know that they signed Jürgen Strand-Larsen. We know they have Brennan Johnson. We know for a fact that they have some really good players in that team. Adam Wharton, Lecroix, in the French international in their backline. He's called Maxence Lecroix. Jefferson Lemar, Christian Richards. Now Jefferson Lemar is not a defender, but he's had to be played there because they lost the captain, Mark Kay. And, so then players like Will Hughes, Tyrick Mitchell, Ismail Sarr, Yeremy Pino, Edin Ketia was out through, I think, a hamstring injury, was it? But yeah, Burnley on the other side, Burnley is one of those teams that I predicted would get relegated, because my prediction was Burnley, Sunderland, and Brentford, that they will be the teams to be relegated. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem to be the case. It appears it will be Wolves, Burnley. I do not know yet who the third is going to be, because one day it looks obviously going to be West Ham, and then they win, and then they move within 3 points behind, safety. So anything can happen. So anyways, for Burnley, of course, they've lost 3 of their last 5 games, and they've had 3 draws in the last 5. The losses against Sunderland and the loss against West Ham. When you look at them under the charges of Scott Parker, Leslie Ugochukwu, Florentino, players like Anthony Fleming, Esteve, Piaz, Kyle Walker, the captain, Martin Dubravka. This one can be, on a good day, he can give you a good performance. But I don't know. I'm just not too sold about that game. I'm just not too sold about that game that is coming up away to Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace themselves are looking to continue with their bounce back from what has been a very, very poor run of form recently, in which they had gone, I think, about 12 or 13 games without a win. So because it's not looked pretty, they need this victory to send them to about 34 points and see if they can catch up to, in fact, to about 35 points and see if they can leapfrog the likes of Newcastle, Bournemouth, and Fulham while at it and get themselves back in the top 10. So I'm going to go for Crystal Palace to win 2-0 for that fixture. I'm going for Crystal Palace to win by 2-0 in their fixture on Wednesday against Burnley. Unless you have contrasting views on that one. Oh, okay. Did I? No, I don't think I missed any comments. Everything checks out well. Okay. Maybe I forgot to. I should have put out a poll for you guys to try and respond to. Anyways, so moving on. Nottingham Forest versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. This is the last game we're going to preview for tonight's broadcast. We'll tackle the one between Man City and Fulham tomorrow, as well as Sunderland against Liverpool tomorrow morning, in the morning broadcast. So, Nottingham Forest versus Wolverhampton Wanderers. I mean, this is another relegation battle fixture for which, if you're Nottingham Forest and you want to guarantee safety, it's a must win. I've said this before. If you're any team in the Premier League on that 20 Premier League log, all those 19 teams, the moment you see that your fixture is up against Wolverhampton Wanderers, you must make it your mission to win this game. Because Wolverhampton Wanderers have been so poor until this stage in the season. They've been really, really poor. Only one victory so far. That victory coming against West Ham United. 5 draws and 19 losses. There's no team that has lost that many games. You know? So for me, if Nottingham Forest are serious about continuing to fight against relegation, because they asked 3 points off of it, then win that game. Because, like I've told you, the team above them in Leeds United have a tough fixture against Chelsea. So you can sort of bet on yourself that Leeds could lose to Chelsea, but if I win my game, we'll go square on points to 29 points. So the mission for Nottingham Forest, for Sean Dyche, is simple, and there should be no excuses whatsoever. I'm not saying it makes it an easy game. I'm simply saying it should be a make or break kind of fixture for you, that you must win it by all measures necessary. We're talking about a Wolverhampton Wanderers side that have lost their last 3 consecutive games, losing to Man City, Bournemouth, and Chelsea. Really, the other were goalless draws against Newcastle and the 1-1 draw against Everton. Nottingham Forest on the other side, 1-2 of the last 5, beating West Ham 2-1 and Brentford 2-0, a goalless draw against Arsenal and the 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace, before losing to Leeds by 3-1 in their last league outing. So you look at that trend, and it's obvious that Nottingham Forest, really, they're not perfect. They are the better side compared to Wolverhampton Wanderers. This is a fixture they won by 0-0 earlier on in the season, while last season they went to Molineux and won there by 3-0. They had the 1-1 draw, the other tie, and the season prior to that, there had been 2 draws between the 2 sides, a 2-2 draw and a 1-1 draw between the 2 sides. But I don't know. I'm going to go with the Nottingham Forest win. Forest to win by 2-1. That's my prediction. So, like I said, there's still more fixtures for match day 26. For the Wednesday fixtures, there are 2 fixtures left. Man City versus Fulham and then Sunderland versus Liverpool. So we'll preview those in the morning at 9 a.m. for our morning broadcast. And then for the Thursday game, we'll have ample time to, that's the game for Arsenal away to Brentford. Very difficult game for the Arsenal. We'll find time and preview that on its own. So otherwise, I want to say thank you to you guys that have been part of the broadcast. Meow Fan, Jedza, Markins, Tom, thank you so much for being part of tonight's podcast. Henrique, thank you so much. Chetan, thank you so much for chipping in earlier on, even though you are interested in cricket. But like I've told you, I do not want to come sit here and gamble and meander and give you and talk about things that I'm not familiar with. So when it comes to the game of cricket, you'll excuse me. I can only give you the little snippets that I know in terms of what I've learned, what I've heard. But in terms of analyzing for your games and things like that, I don't know much. So you'll excuse me on that one. Otherwise, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. For all of you that have been part of tonight's podcast, allow me to wish you a blessed night from henceforth. And let's catch up tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. for our morning broadcast. But do not forget to go over to the channel to watch our videos, watch the shorts, like, comment, share, and subscribe if it's your first time, so that you can help us continue to grow on this journey. It's been what? It's been 2 years, and what? Coming on 2.5 years of doing this? Yeah. So, anyways, thank you so much for the love and support. Have a blessed night. Bye-bye for now.